Let's begin with the Israel lobby because it's relevant to everything that's happening. I remember your great book that you did with Walt. You took a lot of heat for this. Not as controversial today. I mean, I think it's a kind of recognized truth. But the fact that the Israel lobby has essentially bought the U.S. Congress, which means it has bought endless supplies of military aid and given it a kind of impunity to engage in overreach is, I think, being evidenced now. I mean, what Israel's fighting in essence on five fronts. So let's talk about the lobby and how it has affected regional stability and Israeli policy.
Well, the thing is, Chris, that the lobby insists that the United States give Israel unconditional support. And this is certainly the case when you're dealing with the Palestinians. That means the Israelis are pretty much free to do anything they want, including commit genocide in Gaza, and we'll back them anyway. And this is what you see at play today. So, when people talk about Israel's wars in the Middle East, the war in Gaza against the Palestinians, the war in Lebanon against Hezbollah, and the war between Israel and Iran, you're really talking about a war that involves the United States and Israel joined together at the hip. We're deeply involved in these conflicts. Fortunately, we don't have soldiers on the ground who are dying. Of course, we now have some soldiers on the ground in Israel, but not many. But the fact is that we are supplying the Israelis with all sorts of arms, all sorts of diplomatic support, and we allow them to do pretty much anything they want. And this has huge consequences for the region. It certainly has huge consequences for the Palestinians, and it has huge consequences for the United States.
Let's talk about some of those consequences. Israel is, of course, been bombing in Lebanon. It's been bombing in Syria, Yemen, not to mention its saturation bombing of Gaza. Remember, Gaza is a very tiny place, 20 miles long, 5 miles wide, virtually decimating Gaza. But let's talk about the consequences of that. When Israel waded into Lebanon in 1982, it didn't go very well for them, despite their overwhelming firepower.
Well, let's just talk about the Lebanon war, then we can talk about Gaza. Uh, they're obviously fighting against Hezbollah because Hezbollah is supporting Hamas, and it's supporting Hamas by firing rockets and some missiles into northern Israel. And the end result is somewhere between 60 and 70,000 Israelis have had to flee the northern part of Israel and move temporarily into the center. And the Netanyahu government, unsurprisingly, is deeply committed to getting those people back to their homes in the north. So it wants to stop Hezbollah from firing missiles into northern Israel. Hezbollah says the only circumstance under which we'll stop firing those missiles is if you stop the war or the genocide in Gaza. And the Israelis, of course, refuse to do that because they're bent on ethnically cleansing Gaza. So the end result is the Israelis have to figure out another way to deal with Hezbollah. And the first strategy they employed was decapitation. And of course, they killed Nasrallah and a number of other high ranking Hezbollah officials. And that had no real effect. Then they decided they were going to start pummeling the cities and towns in southern Lebanon and Beirut as well, and kill lots of people. And this punishment campaign would hopefully get Hezbollah to throw up its hands and quit. That hasn't worked either. So they've then pursued a third strategy, which is to invade southern Lebanon with ground forces, which is what they have been doing for the past few weeks. This isn't working either. And if you read the Israeli press every day, you see that Hezbollah is continuing to fire, 135, 140, 150 rockets into Israel every day. So they're not solving the problem. And I would add to that, they're not solving the problem in Gaza, and they're not going to solve their problem with Iran by using military force. So all of this is to say that the Israelis are in deep trouble, and because we're joined at the hip with the Israelis, we're in deep trouble too.
You say deep trouble. Let's spell that out, what it means, what deep trouble means for Israel and what deep trouble means for us.
Well, just let's talk about the Israelis to start with. Israel has always emphasized that the last thing it wants to do is fight a protracted war, a war of attrition. And what it wants to fight instead are quick wars, wars that last 6 days, like the famous Six-Day War in 1967. Furthermore, the Israelis have long emphasized that they want to be capable of fighting those wars all by themselves. They don't want to have to depend on another country. Well, if you look at what's happening today, they are involved, in my opinion, in three separate wars that show no signs of ending, that have been going on for at least a year. And this means that the Israelis are in real trouble because they can't win this set of wars quickly and decisively. Furthermore, it's very clear, if you look at how the conflict is being waged, that the Israelis are highly dependent on the Americans. They're not only dependent on uh, the American industrial base for weaponry, they're also dependent on American military forces to help them fight their enemies. You want to remember that on April 14th, when Iran attacked Israel, uh, that the United States played a key role in helping Israel defend itself against Iran's missiles and drones. And we are expecting any day now another attack by Israel against Iran, and then Iran is expected to retaliate. Well, if Iran retaliates, we now have more forces than ever in Israel to help Israel defend itself. Why? Because Israel itself cannot uh, fight off the Iranian missile attack. So you have this very interesting situation where not only can Israel not win these wars that it's fighting, but they've turned into protracted wars, and they're protracted wars in which Israel is heavily dependent on the United States. All of this is to say they're in serious trouble.
And what are the consequences of that ultimately? I mean, of course, Israel would like to displace or ethnically cleanse the Palestinians in Gaza into the Sinai, but the Egyptian military is just in Egypt, has been categorical to Sisi that that is never going to happen. So we know the intent, but can they really push the people out of Gaza? And although they are in big trouble, they're on the verge of annexing northern Gaza. They put it under siege. The 400,000 Palestinians are being slaughtered, starved. Um, I mean, it does seem that that incrementally they are moving towards what it is they want.
I think you can make that argument. I think that it's clear that they're not interested at the moment in cleansing all of Gaza, that they're focusing mainly on northern Gaza. Tony Blinken was in Israel yesterday, and this is Tuesday, and he told the Israelis, and he was speaking here to Netanyahu and his lieutenants, the word was out that they were trying to ethnically cleanse northern Gaza and push all the Palestinians into the southern part of Gaza. And he made it clear that that was unacceptable. The Israelis, of course, denied that they were doing that, when in fact the evidence is overwhelming that that's exactly what they're doing. And the question then is, can Blinken or Biden bring pressure to bear on the Israelis to get them to change their behavior? And the answer there is almost certainly no. So I think there will be significant cleansing of northern Gaza, but that doesn't mean the Palestinians will be driven completely out of Gaza. They'll still be locked in Gaza, just in a smaller space. And the question is, where does that leave the Israelis? They're still running Gaza. And at the same time, one does not want to underestimate the damage that's being done to Israel's reputation. This is a moral stain on Israel that is not going to go away for the foreseeable future. It's not going to go away for a long time. Israel is going to be widely seen as a country that has committed genocide in Gaza. And this is going to do huge damage to Israel's reputation moving forward. And furthermore, it's going to do huge damage to America's reputation because we are widely seen as being joined at the hip with the Israelis. We are complicit in this genocide. And this is going to have long-term consequences.
Explain. I just want to make 2 points. 1973, Israel depended massively on U.S. support because so much of their own armor and everything was wiped out. You had C-130s landing in Israel every 30 minutes, courtesy of Henry Kissinger, to resupply the military. That's number one. Number two, in terms of lying to the Americans, go back to 1982. The Americans begged Israel not to bomb West Beirut, and Israel just did it anyway. These are just patterns that we have seen vis-a-vis the relationship with the United States.
Chris, there is absolutely no doubt that the Israelis are able to do whatever they want, whether you're talking about 1982 or the present, and there's not much we can do to stop them. Again, this is the power of the lobby. The lobby insists that the United States provide Israel with unconditional support, no matter what it does. So if the Israelis disobey us, we just bite our tongue and go along with it. It's just the way it works. So you're correct on that point. With regard to weaponry, there's no question that the Israelis have always depended on us for weaponry. And before they depended on us, they depended heavily on the French. So there's no question they've gotten outside support in terms of providing them with weapons. But what I was talking about is actually helping them to fight their wars. Uh,
Mm.
you want to understand that the Israelis need us in the fight at this point in time. We have lots of assets in the Middle East at this point in time. Lots of assets in the Eastern Mediterranean and in Israel itself and in the Red Sea that are all designed to fight to help Israel in its various wars. And this includes not just Iran; it also includes the Houthis, and it includes Hezbollah as well. So we are deeply involved in helping them fight in ways that was not the case in 1973 or any time before this war.